autonomous maintenance line teams might actually work better when you organize them across lines instead of with the lines. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. In today's video, it is a bit of an epiphany on autonomous management, autonomous maintenance, and it came from a very nice discussion on how do you actually organize the line teams in AM. Right, so this is different from an AM pillar. If you use the DPM methodology with the pillars, autonomous maintenance on the shop floor, you want your teams to be operator-centric. We discussed that in a video recently, but there is one more thing to really think about how you want to organize the teams. See, the traditional way to organize your AM line teams is by line. And so what you do is you say, you know what? We've got a couple of similar machines and we're going to make a pilot line. Well, honestly, even if you do not have similar machines, making a pilot line, a pilot area for AM is a really good idea. But the idea we will be discussing is especially useful if you do have relatively similar lines. They don't need to be exact copies, they just need to have sort of the same functionality in what the lines do. And you see this in quite a number of factories where you have similar packaging lines, similar production lines, similar stancing lines. Well, whatever type of operation you have, many factories have basically the same operation running on a couple of lines, just organized for different products, right? It's easier, you don't have to do that many product changes. You can up or lower the volume that you need. It happens a lot. So what you then get is you say, let's make our AM line team. And we're going to do a pilot line. And this is the area of our team. And then at some point when they are really through step one, they did their initial clean out, they got their tagging set up, they got their checklist set up, the cleaning is more or less stated what they needed to do, you got the auditing up, then you move to step two. You really dive into sources of contamination, cleaning, things like that. And at the same time, you also move to the next line, right? So then you also organize that one, you organize that one, and each of them is a line team. So each line gets their own AM team, their own AM meeting, their support, and they make the standards. Now, this way, you really get the experience of running every part of the line. You get the responsibility over a whole workplace. This works best if it's also like one big workplace. Again, in many factories, what you will see is that even if the line has multiple stations where people work, so you've got maybe 5 people working the line, there is sort of one main operator. Some companies really formalize this, saying there is one operator and there is a number of helpers or loaders or something, right? Or there's a senior operator with a number of operators quite often. But even if you don't, you know that the whole team needs to work together and you have a number of operators that really have to be responsible for the complete working there. That whole team can easily be an AM team, including the helpers. I mean, they have important roles on the line as well. But then when we expand our AM, we are going to put people here on these lines that probably don't really have the experience yet, or we went for that we really want to include all the shifts from the beginning. So on the one pilot line, we had activated people from every shift. Now, they generally do not communicate with each other that much because they only see each other at a shift handover. You cannot really plan a meeting at the same time with all of the members. So either you go for not really a team or you go for just one shift is the real focus. And that means that you have limited knowledge of all of the AM steps in that group. It is a very good way to do because you do get your autonomous responsibility over the whole line. It is a clear area. You also follow the workplace idea. So I'm not saying that this is bad, right? It has a couple of pitfalls that you have to sort of fight with. And there is another way to organize this same idea of the pilot lines and your teams, It has its own problems, but especially if you have relatively similar lines, you might like this. So say we have 4 shifts. That's why every shift got a line in this idea. But what if we organize it slightly differently? So this is our pilot line, but we have sort of a loading, feeding area. And shift A gets that area of the line. Shift B, they take that first operation in the line. And similarly for shifts C and D. Now, maybe this is not completely fair in workload. The area around the machine, you can sort of edit it. Usually loading, unloading areas of machines are not as complex machinery-wise, but they do have a lot more logistics around them. So those teams will do a bit more with the material type of logistics. Those teams will do a bit more on the actual machinery. So this way, you also activate all of the teams at the same time, but you can still split up the meetings. So you can have a meeting in the shift of Team A, and they discuss that part. Of course, in their shift, they have people who work on these lines. They all come together, right? They work everywhere. But you tell them, please, your shift takes care of setting all the standards of that feeding area of the line. You make sure that you fully understand what happens there, that you know what to clean, how to do it effectively, how to set it up, make sure this area is completely tagged out and everything is just really as needed. Of course, they also do whatever all of the other teams define as the tasks that you need to do there, right? If you are on shift and you operate this machine, you have to follow all the standards, all the rules. This is nothing different than before AM. Just back then, the quality department, the safety department, the production department, technology, they set all the rules, they set all the standards. If you're an operator, you have to follow all of those production standards. Nothing has changed, except that the standards in AM will be set by the AM teams at some point. No, they grow into that, but that is the big change. Not the responsibility for execution, that stays the same, the responsibility for defining how we work. And Team A here will just get a lot better at understanding that first part. But now, what you will see is if you implement this. So you have operators who work sort of all of these lines, and you ask them all to look at the feeder part of the pilot machine. They will, of course, as soon as they have something that works a lot better, sort of expand that already. So they will take the other feeders. It sort of migrates there naturally, autonomously, you might even say. And that is, of course, what also happens with all of these, right? So this way, you get that you organize the lines by functional part of the machine. And that way, the teams will get their experience on a functional area. When you expand their area, the scope of their team, they can take that same knowledge. So you train much more specifically. Now, of course, an operator needs to have the knowledge and the understanding of the whole line, but that is also something that these teams need to make sure, right? They have to train their colleagues as well. The Team C here will always be a bit ahead on in-depth knowledge of that secondary production process part, right? So that part of the machine. That's okay, but they cannot be much more than one step ahead. They need to constantly be training their colleagues as well, just like all of the others. And maybe at some point you mix it up a little bit, but the big advantage of this is that you build the expertise. That expertise can very naturally distribute to the rest of your organization, to the rest of this production cell. And from the start, you have all of your shifts involved, and all of your shifts can organize around the shift itself, which sets you up in a much better way to make the teams autonomous from the start. So it does require more resources. It does require training your people more if you want to let them go and also work on this in night shifts. That requires a lot of training, more resources. It will not generate that same flow of information on the line, although honestly, in practice, I also don't see it happen very often if you do keep one pilot line, because quite often that one pilot line team is filled with managers and specialists. And then you're also not getting anywhere. So, a nice idea. As I said, the traditional way to organize AM by line, it works. But this way of organizing it across your lines, but dividing it into functional areas, is definitely worth considering, because in your situation it might work better. And especially it will work better if you have a number of pretty similar lines. And if you have this, give it a thought. Now, if that triggered indeed your thinking, don't forget to hit that like button. Let me know in the comments if you have experience with this way of splitting AM, what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Write them down below. For now, I wish you the best of luck implementing, thinking about autonomous maintenance. And as always, don't forget to also enjoy the continuous improvement journey.